The farming community of Leamington is now left to pick up the pieces and search for answers as their economic stimulus has been snatched from beneath them and the economic future of the town hangs in the balance thanks to a decision made by the Heinz Corporation to close its Leamington location this June, leaving hundreds out of work and the tomato capital of Canada without its longtime staple, leaving the region without its true identity. Essex MPP Therese Nanashek says the final verdict handed down by Heinz to halt production at its Leamington location carries with it both unfortunate and devastating consequences for the good people of Leamington.
Well, the news coming out of Heinz in terms of its decision to close the 104-year-old factory really has been devastating to that community. Not only the workers, but the entire region. We know that Heinz, as you mentioned, was a staple of the economic base. It provided good-paying jobs for generations. It's almost unfathomable that a company with that type of a history in that community can, with one fell swoop, decide to eliminate or end their operation there. Even more bewildering is the fact that Leamington is the tomato capital of Canada. We have the longest growing season of anywhere in the country. We have high productivity, high volumes, good quality, and you've got a ready-made source of product right there. It begs the question, how, in fact, can this make good economic sense when the tomatoes being grown for ketchup or other products that they did make in that facility are literally right on your doorstep. The supply chain is right there. Some serious questions need to be asked about the nature of globalization, free trade, as well as food security and food sovereignty. Our country at this very moment doesn't have a plan to ensure and protect domestic food production, and I think it's left vulnerable, as we've seen in Leamington as well as other areas around the province, by corporate culture that doesn't really value domestic production or good paying jobs.
You personally represent the people of Essex County, obviously, as the member of Parliament. So I'm wondering your thoughts on what's next for the region, where they go from there.
Well, I'm wondering that too as well. I don't think anybody has a clear picture of what the future of Leamington will be at this very moment. The decision from Heinz to pull out that facility is pretty recent. They haven't necessarily communicated their intentions going forward in terms of what that plant could be, and specifically whether they intend to sell it to anyone. I think that the future depends on what Warren Buffett does with that facility. If he is planning on selling it to another operator, then there may be some hope there. But as we've seen so often in cases of outsourcing and globalization, where production is moved from one jurisdiction typically to a low wage jurisdiction, those historic facilities are simply shuttered and mothballed and not really ever used again. We've seen that in our automotive sector, General Motors, and various tier 2 suppliers. That's really symptomatic of a globalization regime that simply looks for the lowest wage jurisdiction to manufacture their goods. But the part that hurts the most is that they ship them back into our country and expect us to be able to afford them without the jobs that previously were associated with that production. So it's a vicious cycle that I think really lies at the head of the federal government and in the federal jurisdiction.
So you have personally talked about three ways to personally or that we can stimulate job growth in terms of making sure industrial hydro prices are down, capital investment, and job training. So can you talk about the importance of coming up with a platform to make sure that we can retain good paying jobs throughout the province?
Sure. Well, number one, I think I'll re-emphasize the point. We need to look at our free trade structure at the national level to ensure that our economic base, our manufacturing, agriculture, and our resource base is on a level playing field, and we're not simply exporters of raw goods and expect them to be manufactured somewhere else. Secondly, when it comes to energy prices, we have a history in this province, especially of an energy system that's been tinkered with and bastardized, really, with influence of private industry coming in and jacking up the prices and the cost of producing power. Other jurisdictions like Manitoba use their publicly funded and publicly run utilities and energy production as a strategic asset to incentivize and entice industry to come in. They sell their hydro at a non-profit basis. That's as good as it can get. I don't know why we don't do that in the province, whether it be through hydroelectric or nuclear or renewable energy. We've for far too long relied on private industry to produce that power and to distribute it. The third thing is we've relied in this province on across the board tax cuts at the corporate level to entice corporations to come and to set up shop in this province. We've seen that doesn't work. Many of the companies that receive massive tax breaks in terms of their corporate tax rate are the ones that really don't need it because either they're making huge profit margins or they're also the ones that aren't using it in terms of reinvesting into production or actually hiring people. So we'd like to take a different approach, one that was adopted by the Obama administration and one that in fact was adopted by the municipality that Heinz will be setting up shop in Ohio, and that's called a targeted tax subsidy or tax rate, a targeted tax incentive based on job creation. It's pretty simple. If you're going to create jobs in this province, then we can assist you at the provincial level in terms of corporate taxes. But just across the board corporate tax rate doesn't really work for everyone. It reduces the overall revenues for the province, and ultimately, most of the time, it turns out to be a waste of money when it comes to economic stimulus.
And as you know, of course, most jobs are created by small businesses and people that start small businesses. So for a town like Leamington losing the Heinz plant, can you just tell me about the impact it will have from an economic standpoint for everyone else in the region?
Well, I think that's yet to be known in terms of the final outcome, and also the fact that there could potentially be a new operator in there. But we've seen communities go through this before, where the main employer, whether it be a lumber mill or Blackberry in Kitchener-Waterloo, when those main employers pull out, it has really detrimental downstream effects on the broader community. Not only the municipal tax rate and base and municipal services that go along with it, but also, as you mentioned, those small businesses that rely on purchasing power of people who had good, stable, long-term jobs, and jobs that came with benefits, jobs that had potentially a pension at the end of their career. Those are what sustain small communities in small-town Ontario and mid-town Ontario, really, I would argue, across the country. But as we've seen, again, the effects of globalization and free trade dismantle that type of a system, we see communities suffering more and more. And my job is to to identify it, to scrutinize those policies, and to try to do something about it. But I think finally people are starting to get it that we need to be more protective of our communities and of our industries, and more instead of laissez-faire, which is the common approach in terms of the free market. We need to be more active participants in the growth of our economy, and working with industry and business and small and medium-sized businesses to identify their challenges, as in hydro rates, but also to be there with specific targeted supports when we know it can be beneficial to our communities. That's a whole lot of words strung together, but in my mind it means fairness and progress for our communities, but it's going to take a whole lot of effort.
So finally, what would be your, final rallying cry for the people that depend on working at Heinz? I guess what I'm asking is, what do you think is in the future for the town of Leamington once June comes and the plant eventually closes?
I don't know. I really don't know, and I don't think anybody does know at this very moment, Kevin. But what my message to the community of Leamington and to the farmers and to the families that are associated with Heinz, my message is to continue to persevere, to have hope, and to also not be afraid to ask for help. My message to members of that community who aren't associated with Heinz is that they should be ready to extend a helping hand to folks that they might not have ever met before, but that community is going to be going through one of the hardest times that it ever has, and they'll only get through it with the support of each other. So if someone sees someone or hears of someone who's having a hard time, reach out, connect with them, and make sure that folks know that they're not alone, and there's support out there for them.
And one final follow-up to that: what role, if any, do you think the government of Canada, both from local, provincial, or federal standpoint, has to show their commitment to the people of Leamington and the people who will be directly affected by the closure?
Well, I think all roles of government have a part to play in this circumstance. At the federal level, it would be ensuring that people who need access to supports like employment insurance are able to access it in a quick and efficient way. Provincially, if it does come to the fact that some of those workers need to be retrained or supported through other mechanisms, then I would hope that there's a support team on the ground there, because we're talking about the very fabric of that community being affected. So it would warrant a special extra step to go the extra mile from a provincial standpoint. And at the municipal level, coordinating these resources, because they're really the folks that are on the ground talking to those workers. So relaying that information and working with all levels of government, I think, would be the best way, in a consolidated way. Again, no doubt that it's going to be one of the most challenging times in Leamington's history, but I'm optimistic that there's a lot of faith there. There is a lot of resilience there. I mean, they're proud, they're productive, and they are a community. And I don't think their resolve will be broken anytime soon.
Well, I thank you for taking time out today for chatting about this issue and all the people that will be affected, and hopefully within the future, the town of Leamington can be put back on solid footing. For the News Blitz, I'm Kevin McShann.